Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'akol niyeh b'dvarei.
Amen.
Okay, good morning. Kedvach. Welcome back to a brand new week of journeying Be'ezras Hashem through Sefer Likutei Moharan together. As we jump back into Torah Chof Hey, we are in the middle of Eis Daled Be'ezras Hashem, and this morning's shir is sponsored by Rebbe Al-Kubi in honor of my humble self from an admirer in Las Vegas. That's very sweet of him. Yossi Meyer as a zechus for Yosef Ben Rivka and family, also sponsored by Rav Zev Klein Le'ilin his parents, Rivka Bryndel Basvi Simcha and Ya'akov ben Yeshעיהו, as well as a refuah shalema for Rav Peretz Shalom ben Bluma Tzipora, who is in great need of rachmei shamayim. The shir should be a zechus for his refuah shalema b'karv mamish Be'ezras Hashem Soich Shar Chole Yisrael. We jump back into Torah Chof Hey, and as mentioned, we are toward the beginning of Eis Daled, where the tzaddik is explaining how, as a person rises from level to level, like we described, a person goes from Adama to Seichel in this microcosmic experience, layer after layer, level after level, battling with klipas that although some other neshama might have been in some sense in that same place, but every neshama is unique, every neshama anew needs to grapple with those same difficulties. How to get past them? How should a person deal with the challenges, with the obstacles that are going to arise as the person tries to make his or her way from level to level spiritually, emotionally, as a person progresses and as a person evolves and develops through their journey and experience of this worldliness. And Rebbe Nachman told us the way to do that is through what is called Geulah habayre. And this is something akin to, like we said, when a person davens, and a person in their davening is supposed to move from level to level, world to world. And that means that the beginning of davening, from the beginning of davening until Haidu, until Psukkah de Zimra, is the world of Asiya. And as a person tries to move from one world to the next, so then naturally the klipas are going to arise. And the way to be machnia them, at least in the Sechsfard Edus Mizrach, is to start with Haidu Lashem, Kir B'Shmai Haidu Ba'amim Aliloisa, which is called eliciting and activating the Gedulas Habayre, and in that sense we're able to overcome them. We explain this in a sort of a Hasidish way, on the level of Hasidus, to say that what's the oimik of that? Why is Gedulas Habayre overcoming the klipas? So on one hand, it sort of scares them away, right? I mean, when you call into reality the infinity of the Creator, so then the klipas can't stand, and that's on one level. But we were explaining that on a deeper level, the way to overcome the Yetzer Hara is to realize there is no Yetzer Hara, to realize it's a Malach Kadosh, it's a messenger from Hashem, and it's part of a process that, like we said, isn't b'diavad, but is very much l'chatchila. And in that sense, you didn't scare it away, you didn't beat it up, right? You transformed it in such a way where it's not what you previously thought it might be. And that's what we suggested. That's what's going on here with the klipas, based on Rebbe Nachman's wording, just in Eis Beis, as tzarich leilech derech ela demyanos kedei la'agia la'kedusha. It is a required process for a person to encounter these challenges, difficulties, and then they're going to be able to encounter kedusha. Only after they go through that process of the challenge, working through it, and in the process moving from dimyan closer to seichel, then and only then will they be able to access kedusha karaui. And this is what it means to call into the equation. The Gedulas Habayre is to recognize that the klipas that appear to be formidable opponents and oppositional forces are actually working for us. It's part and parcel of the process, and a person is it doesn't need to run away. It's part of the journey. It's part of the journey. So the Rebbe told us, how do we call into being the Gedulas Habayre in the process of our own rising from layer to layer, meaning outside the context of tefillah in a person's own life. Like V'ani Tefillah, David HaMelech says, my whole life is a prayer. So we're constantly moving through tefillah. But the klipas arise. What should a person do? So let's jump inside from the big word over here, by his galus. It should be in bold. Says the Rebbe, V'ha'eskalus gedulas haboire hu al yedei tzedakah shenoistim la'ani hagun. The way to do this, the way to bring about gedulas haboire in our own journey, is to give tzedakah la'ani hagun, to a proper ani. And we explained last time, we saw from Torah Beis in Tinyana that Rebbe Nachman holds the Geder Adam, like the pasuk says, Medaber b'tzedakah. Medaber is the human being. The Geder Adam is tzedakah, that it's the derech of a human being to be merachim on others, masha inkein, unlike a Baal Chai. And we explained that we want to bring about that Selim Elokim that is embodied in the Seichel, which is unique to the human being. And we want to get out of the Medama, which we compared in Ais Aleph at the end, to a Behema, to a Karban. Want to get rid of that. And so the way to do that is to bring about the inyan of Tzedakah. When we're giving Tzedakah properly, in the proper way, in a humble way, recognizing where all the money comes from, we call into being the Tzelem Elokim, the realization that all we're ever supposed to be in this world is a reflection of the infinite. And when we do that, so then, meaning even in my own humble life and in our own lives, with the challenges that we encounter and the obstacles that we're working through, there's nothing but godliness evolving, so to speak, in this reality for its own purposes. And that's what's brought into being when a person is giving tzedakah la'ani hagun, tzedakah to a proper ani. So the Rebbe says, and here we continue, Ki ikra geulah va'pe'er, who is galus hagvanim. Because the primary revelation of his sparus, of beauty, of splendor, is in what's called his galus hagvanim, the revelation or activation of colors. And in Sifrei Pnimius, it's taken as axiomatic that the kesef v'zav hein hagvanim. Gold and silver are seen as the essence of all colors, because they represent the two sides of the spectrum. Kesef is very light, right? That's all the way over to the side of the white colors. And Zav is red, or Zav is gold. It's dark, it's saturated, and that's on the other side. And within Kesef and Zav is reflected all the different hues, all the different colors. When sunlight hits it, that's why they're so precious, because they're beautiful. They're beautiful because they're colorful, right? Because each of them contains all the different colors. Ki gvanan ila'in bahem. And in the Sifrei Pnimius, it isn't just that they're precious metals, they're beautiful, but reflected in them are what are called the gvanim ilayin, the collectivity of the higher elevated colors. Now we know from the Ramak, from the Zar colors, from Tzadikim, that color comes from the spheres. The 7 colors of the rainbow emerge from the lower 7 spheres, from Chesed down to Malchus. But all of the subsequent spheres, from Tiferes down to Netzach and Hod and Yesod and Malchus, are all already encapsulated, and Muchrach that has to be this way because the system unfolds in a system of cascading godliness, so all lower levels need to be contained in the higher levels, especially in a system of Kabbalah where you cannot have a third element, or a fourth, or a fifth, or a sixth, or a seventh without the first and the second, right? Because everything relies on 2. And then out of the two-ness, right, out of the multiplicity, which is our experience of reality, a new unity is able to be manifest. That's the whole point of this world of ultimate duality, multiplicity, is so that the Achdus HaBoire should be able to become revealed in a way that it wasn't, so to speak, Koydem HaBriya. Even though Atu Ad Shaloi Nivra Olam, the point is to reveal that Atu Hu even Misha Nivra Olam. And that's when you have dualities. You have the Bechina, let's say, in the biggest abstract makif of Chessed and Gevurah. Once you have the revelations of Chessed and Gevurah, okay, then you have Tiferes. Tiferes is Ya'akov Avinu coming out of Avram to the side of Chesed, Yitzchak to the side of Gevurah. Ya'akov Avinu becomes the ultimate Bechir Sheba Avos, and the one who produces the 12 Shvatim, of whom the whole entire Klal Yisrael is descendant, because we emerge from the place of making unity out of multiplicity. So all subsequent energy, starting from Tiferes and then refracted down into Netzach and Hod for a further birur called Yesod, and then down finally into Malchus, which is the ultimate end goal, end game, needs to emerge from Chesed and Gevurah. So Chesed and Gevurah will contain the roots for everything else. And therefore, Kesef and Zav, which respectively denote Chesed and Gevurah, are going to be seen as the Gvanin Ilahin Bahem. The elevated colors, meaning all of the other colors on the spectrum, are coming forth from the collectivity of Chesed and Gevurah, captured in Tiferes, and then like a prism, shining down through Netzach Chod Yesod and Malchus. Ki Gvanin Ilahin Bahem. Ugvanim Ilaim Hamlubashim B'Kesef V'Zav. Now says the Rebbe, these holy, elevated, lofty colors, which we now understand to be reflective of a Kodesh Baruch Hu's midas, meaning the way that Hashem manifests Himself in the world. Ein Me'irin, those colors only shine Ela Kishaba'im Le'ish HaYisraeli, when they come into the possession of a Jewish person. And the wording is precise because it's not just any Jewish person. These words, Ish HaYisraeli, should be familiar. Where did we encounter Ish HaYisraeli? In the very beginning, in the second paragraph of the whole Sefer. What did the Rebbe say over there? You can flip back and take a look. Ki Ish HaYisraeli tzarich tamid le'stakel ba'aseichel sheyesh b'chol davar. Right? Or shel kol davar le'kasher atzmei la'chachma ba'aseichel sheyesh b'chol davar. The Ish HaYisraeli in the corpus and the writings of Rebbe Nachman represents the tzaddik, right? Is the ultimate model for what the Jew should be. It's the Ish HaYisraeli, not just a person who's Jewish. The real Ish HaYisraeli, who lives life in such a way where he or she are mistakel in the seichel. Talking about seichel now, right? To get out of medame into seichel. Who live with the seichel shel kol davar, and who bind themselves, we touched up over there, we learned, means to recognize their whole purpose in this world, their mission. That's what it means, Ish HaYisraeli. When money comes into the possession of this kind of Jew, the Ish HaYisraeli, right, that kind of Jew, so then the Gavanin Ilayin are shining. Doesn't mean that their money is any shinier than anybody else's money, right? So it doesn't mean that if they have gold or silver, you can see in them more colors than you can see in the gold and silver, sitting in an Albanian warehouse somewhere. It's not what it means. Is there any gold and silver in Albania? Not likely. I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Somewhere else. Nothing. There's no difference in terms of its physical sheen and its shine. What does the Rebbe mean? The spiritual reflection of the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The presence of the divine. In the life of an Ish HaYisraeli, money is different. Money is illuminated. Money is shining. Dafka, these two inyanim of colors, Kesef and Zav, Chesed and Gevurah, are shining in the life of an Ish HaYisraeli as it relates to their funds, as it relates to their money. Why? Because the Ish HaYisraeli realizes that he has money for one reason and one reason only, which is to give it away. Either to sustain and support his family, there's ein tzedakah gedolah mizu, that's the greatest tzedakah in the world, it begins at home, or to be constantly looking outside of himself to see who can he help. Who can he help? So says the Rebbe, Kisham Mekaimam. You know where money belongs? In the possession of a person who knows that money doesn't belong there. That's Kisham Mekaimam. What's Sham? Sham is somewhere else. Kisham, like we touched in Torah above. Kisham Mekaimam. Not money belong, because you see, it all depends how you read it. You could read this in the most ethnocentric, racist way. Like, money, belongs to Jews, and it's the only place where money. You have to know how to listen to the words, the tenor of the words and the context of all the writings of the Rebbe. You want to know where money belongs? Sham. Ki sham mekaimam. Because money needs to be given away. And the Ish HaYisraeli who lives in alignment with the Seichel Sheyesh B'chol Davar knows that when money comes into his possession, it's not for to put in a bank account somewhere. It's to use. It's to use to sustain and support positive, productive the flourishing of either himself and his own life in a holy way, or others. And then the colors join in one with the other, the Chesed and the Gevurah, and they shine. And I think the Chesed and the Gevurah coming together are reflective of this that the Rebbe is talking about, tzedakah, but not just any tzedakah. What did the Rebbe say? Tzedakah to who? La'ani Hagun. Because the Rebbe has a Torah later on in Likutei, which we'll get to together, as just Hashem, when we're all living in Yerushalayim. The Rebbe says over there that there's no greater tikkun bris than tzedakah to an ani hagun. Because in a certain sense, if you think about Pigam Bris, is taking shefa that belongs in a certain place and putting it somewhere else, not where it belongs. So taking tzedakah and giving it to an ani hagun is the bechina of tikkun bris, because then you're putting the shefa in the right place. But the Rebbe says if a person gives tzedakah la ani she'ena hagun, it's weiter Pigam Bris, because that's a replica of the same pigam, where the person's taking shefa, and again, they're putting it where it does not belong. So what does it take to discern whether or not the money that we're giving is going to the right reasons or not right? So only one day a year that it doesn't matter, right? That's Purim. It doesn't matter. Whoever reaches out their hand, you give, and it doesn't matter, which is a hugely, hugely significant inyan, especially in light of what we just learned about this being a tikkun bris, and not getting into that now. So why on Purim, if you give money to an ani she'ena hagun, that's also okay. Okay, that's a very, very, very deep side. It has to do something with Esther saying achein avi al hamelech shaloi kedas, and that's been a hapachu, and that's the whole Purim story. Without getting into that now, what does it take to be able to discern who we're giving money to? Well, presumably the impulse to give is chesed, and the impulse to discern who we're giving to is Gevurah. And so the Gvanini line of Kesef and Zav, which are Chesed and Gevurah respectively, shine in the money of an Ish HaYisraeli who recognizes Ki Sham Mekayma. That money is Sham. We have to give it away. But in the property of the Jew, in this money of the tzaddik who recognizes that the only reason I have something is to find a way to give it along to someone else, that's what we're here for. V'alachta b'drachav, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's godless is olam chesed yibaneh, but ra, that the world wouldn't be meskayim, right? So he was mishatef imay. HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the world with chesed and gevurah. In that process, the midas of Chesed and Gevurah are going to manifest. And that's what they're ukishmisnarin agvanin. Back a line. V'nechlalim zeh bazeh. Chesed and Gevurah, Kesef and Zav, Ani Hagun. But it's tzedakah, but it's Ani Hagun, Chesed and Gevurah. Umisnarin elu agvanim. And then the colors of Chesed and Gevurah, white and red, are shining. Bebechinas Yisrael asher becha espaer. What's espaer? Espaer means glory, shining, beautiful. But here it's very precise, because Tiferes is the result of Chesed and Gevurah coming together. So says the Rebbe, when you have money in the possession of an Ish HaYisraeli who realizes that Sham Mekayma, and realizes that tzedakah is meant to be given, chesed, to an ani hagun gevurah, so then it's Yisrael, Ish HaYisraeli, asher becha espaer. That's the Tiferes. That's the Tiferes of a God-conscious life, of the Ish HaYisraeli from Torah Aleph making a cameo over here in Torah Chav. Ki mekoyim agvanim einoi ela etzel Ish HaYisraeli. Because the place of these colors is only manifest where? Eitzel Ish HaYisraeli. You could also darshan the word Eitzel means, it doesn't say by, right, in the life, but by, Eitzel, to the person who's next to him. But you don't need that drush, that's a little bit remes. Ki makam agvanim eina ela, because the colors of Chesed and Gevurah manifest in the way the Ish HaYisraeli relates to his or her money. Ukeshemisnar agvanin, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu misgadol u'mispar behem, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu has Tiferes from them. You know why? Bebechinas li hakesef v'li hazav. Because this person's engagement with money, recognizing that the whole purpose of money that they make is so that they could pass it along and give to someone else, brings into creation the reality that money doesn't belong to anybody. Liya kesef, liya zav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, mine is kesef, mine is the zav. That's the Binah of Tiferes. That's the Binah of Chessed and Gevurah, the midas with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself in the world. V'nasa mehem bigdei yesha. And this produces what's called bigdei yesha, garments of salvation. What's bigdei yesha? Says the Rebbe, yesha is staklusa. The word yesha can mean salvation. It could also mean to look, right, or to turn. Vayisha, Hashem turned to the carbon of Hevel, right, Bavel Kayin Loisha. Kama Yishay El Hashem, another pasuk, to look toward HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to turn toward Hashem. Machmas ha'pe'er ha'kol mistaklim boy. And when people see in the world that there's such a thing, that the Jewish person engages with money in this way, where they're mistapik b'muat, where the little bit that they have they're comfortable with, and they're excited about, and they don't constantly seek more and more and more and more, because whatever more they have that's in excess, they're already giving away, because they realize ki sham mekaimam, got to give the money sham, got to put it somewhere else. But the little bit that they have, like we learned in Torah Chof Aleph, I believe. No. Which was the one about financials? It's Chof Aleph, yeah. Yeah. No, you test. Yeah, you test. I think. Now I'm all confused. But one of those Tiferes, where a person is learning how to be mistapik b'muat. So we learned over there that, like Chazal tell us, Ezu ashir hasameach b'chalkai. There's a certain oisher, there's a certain aspect of wealth and happiness, Aleph Ayin, that a person experiences when they're happy with what they have. And so when people see the way that a tzaddik engages with his money, the money that he gives away, and therefore the money that he has that he's mistapik with and actually happy over without needing anything else, so then machmas ha'pe'er ha'kol mistaklim by. There's such beauty there that everybody can't stop looking at it. Ki kula b'mis'avim listakel by. Everybody wants it. But when property is by the nations of the world, idol worshippers, not knowing the secret of Ezu Asher Asamech Bechelkai, the money doesn't shine. Because they whatever they have, it's not shining. They want more and more and more and more. And the whole purpose of life is just to get more and more and more. And it's so interesting, I was just thinking the other day, today we've heard from so many people who really made it, top tier people. I haven't played that clip, I think, or showed the cover that clip of, what's his name, the golfer, Scheffler maybe? Right, Scotty Scheffler, but others, especially people who really made tremendous amounts of money, who are giving testimony firsthand, that this is not what makes them happy.
Warren Buffett.
Yeah, and so many others. There's so many of these clips. Billionaires who are trying to warn people, don't waste your life trying to get here, because this is not necessarily going to give you what you think it's going to give you. And nobody listens to them. They say, no, but by me it'll be different. But the money doesn't shine. As I gvan nelamim ayram ve'ena meirim, ke'ein sham mekayma, which you can read because that's not the place for shining money, or you can read that they don't have the consciousness there of sham mekayma. They don't have the consciousness that money is to be given away, and whatever money that we have is infinitely significant. Ezu ashir hasameach bechelkai. All I need is my chelik. I don't need anybody else's chelik. On the contrary, any chelik that I have that's more than what I need is already someone else's chelik. I got to give it away. Like we said, because in the life of an Ish HaYisraeli, that's where money is engaged with properly in such a way that it should shine, in such a way that it should reflect the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the essence from which money derives, which is kesef, chesed, and zahav, gevurah, which is tzedakah, chesed, la'ani hagun, gevurah. That's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is shining. Ubishvil zer, Rebbe Nachman says, almost like a funny thing, ha'akum te'ivim l'mammon Yisrael. That's why non-Jews are desperate for Jewish money. Afal pi sheyesh la'akum kesef zav harbe, even though they already have tons and tons of kesef and zav, te'ivim l'dinar shal Yehudi, because they look into a life of a tzaddik and they see how is it possible that he has just a little bit and he's so much happier than me. There's something special about their money. There must be something different about Jewish money. That when you have Jewish money, it's like that ingredient. You remember the Gemara? He has a good ingredient, Shabbos Shemai. That's why the food tastes so much, more beautiful, because he puts an ingredient called Shabbos in it. They think maybe that Jews have there's some secret there. Ki ilu loy ra mama miyama, like he never saw money before. Desperate, just somehow to get his hands on Jewish funds. Says the Rebbe, and they're making a huge mistake. Because there's nothing special about Jewish money. That's the chiddush. And I know this reads the opposite of the way that it reads al pi pshat. I'm suggesting a new way of reading it. You can feel free to take or leave it. There's a big mistake. The only reason the money is shining there is because of a proper way that the Ish HaYisraeli has of relating to money. So it's a consciousness, it's not the actual funds. It's because the Jew is engaging with the funds in a way of Yisrael asher b'cha espa'er. V'zeh machma she'hakesef zav sheyesh tachas yadam ein hagvana me'irim. The money that they have is not shining because they're in a consciousness of polytheism. They're not in a consciousness of reflecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu's midas in creating the world. Chessed and Gevurah. So, ein hagvana me'irim, the colors don't shine, the midas of Hashem don't shine. And therefore, ve'ein hachein sharira al mammon shalahem. That word chein is very significant in this context because he already mentioned Ish HaYisraeli, and what was Torah Aleph all about? Chein. Chein. And how we need to re-access our chein and overcome the chein shal sheker of the Umas Ha'olam, who think that happiness is in having more and more and more and more, which is the bechina of Esav yesh li rav. And we need to get back to the consciousness of Yaakov Avinu, which is the Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Halim, which is the aspect of chein amiti, which is yesh li kol. That even though Yaakov has much less than Esav, like we learned in a previous Torah, Esav says yesh li rav, he has a lot, but he could always use more. And Yaakov Avinu has just what he has, but he says, "Yesh li kol, I have everything," because in the little bit that I have, I already experienced the totality of what I need. That's the bechina of the tam in the story of the chacham and the tam, like we spoke out. Yaakov ish tam.
Is the Rebbe saying that the demionis of the Yisrael is what creates the reality of their moment? And so when a guy sees the moment of the Yisrael, he sees going through the lenses of the reality of the Yisrael, we exercise chadimian on the money. So meaning, it all really depends what reality you create for yourself. Beautiful. This mistake is itself the result of dimion. And presumably, if the Umas Ha'olam rise to a higher level into Seichel, then they'll see. And and then they'll get out of dimion. Beautiful. It's a primary example of moving from dimion to Seichel. And so the Ish HaYisraeli is in Seichel. And in Seichel, everything's good. In Dimion, all kinds of issues. Right? So the Dimion is yesh li rav, I need more. The Seichel is, I have what I need. And whatever extra I have is for someone else. That's Seichel. Right?
The colors aren't shiny. The chen amiti, right? How to make money everlasting, not to experience and enjoy Tiferes adam hazeh for our own selfish purposes that are fleeting. That's the bechina of sheker, like we learned many times. So the chen amiti is not shining in their money. Because, at least at this point in history, although we hope things will change, the consciousness is by tzaddikim. Tzaddikim have this experience and interaction and engagement with money, where they understand this balance of chesed and gevurah. And I'd like to say that even among the Chassidu Umas Ha'olam, all the while that it isn't emunah in this way, where it isn't just Chochmah b'gayim tamin, like we learned, which is the abstraction of all abstractions of spirituality, but there's Torah. If you don't have that, then even the engagement with physicality, which might be better, sort of than hedonistic, selfish, self-oriented, but it's the opposite extreme. It's the total renunciation of anything, of any physicality. And it's removing oneself, mortifying oneself, like monk-like, on top of a mountain. And that's also not what we're talking about. Remember, when we talk about the light of Am Yisrael and what we're supposed to bring to the world, we talk always, what's the key word that we use again and again? Synthesis. This is what it means to be a Jew, to reveal the light of synthesis in the world. And I hinted to that in the beginning of this year when we spoke about why it is that Ya'akov Avinu is Bechir Shabbat, as I've mentioned this in the past, because Ya'akov Avinu is the synthesis between Chessed and Gevurah, between Avram and Yitzchak. And the whole purpose of the creation of the world, like we said, Atuhu ad sheloi nivra olam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's achdus was certainly extant. Hashem is mechuyev hametzias. He existed before everything. He is existent, and it existed before the creation of the world. Our goal is to reveal the way in which Atuhu misha nivra olam, that even after the expression of diversity and multiplicity, Atahu. And that was most emblematized by Yaakov Avinu, that Yaakov Avinu represents the bringing together of Chesed and Gevurah into a new synthesis, which brings Achdus out of duality, shows how these two things not only are not in conflict, but they can actually join together to produce something even more beautiful than any of the parts was able to represent in and of itself. That's the Inyan of Yaakov Avinu. Memela, this is the nation that we come from. That we come from, Yaakov. This is the Av that Klal Yisrael come from. This is the essence of what it means to be a Jew. Lost that train of thought. A second.
That's why the.
One second. I have to go back in the recording. I lost that train of thought.
Goes back to the Pakim Katana as well. That's when he gets the name Yisrael. He's very mindful of this.
Yisrael. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, what were we going to say?
I was going to say that we were speaking. That's why the guy sees the moment of the Yid and he sees the synthesis, and he thinks, if I have that money, I'll tap into that.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yes, thank you. That's what I was talking about. Just reminding me. Right. So even by the Chassidu Umas Ha'olam, still not with the balance. It's still not with the balance because again, the whole aura that we're trying to talk about here is the aura of collectivity. It has to be Chesed and Gevurah. It has to be Tzedakah la'ani hagun, Kesef and Zav, not just Zav without Kesef or Kesef without Zav. Again, this is one of those other pairs of synthesis that we've spoken about the whole time through everything that we've learned so far. This is another manifestation. It's got to be Kesef and Zav. It has to be both. By a Yid, we have this consciousness from our Torah Kedosha for thousands of years, where, at least in the lives of tzaddikim who are mamish living the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects and hopes and yearns for all Yidden to be, this synthesis is there. There's both the impulse to give and there's the impulse to have and to enjoy fully what one has, while at the same time knowing what one no longer needs and then happily gives it away, recognizing that it liya kesef liya zav. That's the synthesis. Meaning, we were speaking about Chessed and Gevurah, which produced Tiferes, in the context of giving tzedakah away. But more collectively, there's a Chessed Gevurah balance between what you give away and what you don't give away. Right? That's also something. This unique balance, we argue, is something that's unique to Am Yisrael. And like we said, the Eino Yehudim, the nations of the world, are constantly looking for that. That's what they want. And they think they'll get it if they can get their hands on a tzaddik's money. Because they think there's something special about his money. But it's not. There's something special about the way that he approaches his money. Avodah. Take if umiyad kisha'aka makabel mammon miYisrael, because they're making this mistake thinking that it has to do with the money, right? And not realizing that it's a consciousness. So the second that they get the money, take of umiyad the glow and the glory goes away because it had nothing to do with the money. In other words, all money has the capacity to shine. The question is how you engage with it. But all the while that the akum remain akum, and they're not living in the monotheistic consciousness of the purpose, which is to imitate in this world the Creator and to reveal HaKadosh Baruch Hu's midas. And polytheism means that there are different gods, chas v'shalom, for different midas. And so only in polytheism can you have the concept of chesed without gevurah or gevurah without chesed. Because monotheism shows that every impulse in the world comes from one, and therefore we have the capacity to reunify when we engage with chesed or gevurah. Akum is oivdik hachavim u'mazalas, meaning to them, their God is the gold God. So their God says, keep it all for yourself. Or, their God is the chesed God. And so their God says, give it all away. Neither are the right balance. And so therefore, when you have this aspect of Akum, who are to even L'mammon Yisrael because they think that that's what's going to do it for them, but then it comes Tachas Yadam, the Chayin is Nistale. Because the Chayin was emergent from the Tiferes of Yisrael Asher Aspire, of this balance which produces the Yaakov Avinu consciousness. Yaakov is Tam, the Bechina of the Tam, and the story of Rebbe Nachman of the Chacham and the Tam, who is able to live and experience life in the proper way, enjoying what he has and knowing what to give away. 1 second. Quite early in the morning for a brain to be totally woken up, you know. It's brain is not fully functioning. 1 second. There's one other nakuda. Wait 1 second. Yeah, question?
Maybe it's also that nakuda that we can see later the effect of misplaced chesed by the goyim if they don't have the proper balance.
Precisely.
And chesed comes from a place of where ego is there, then it's totally misplaced.
Precisely. And our job is to rectify that. Like that's our job. And so anytime we point out a deficiency among the nations of the world, it's actually pointing out a deficiency in ourselves. Because they're only like that because we're not doing our job. If we were doing our job to become the Mamlechas Kahanim and Goy Kadosh, then the nations would learn proper boundaries and how to synthesize things because they'd see it. And then they'd realize it's not an isolated thing by this Jew or that Jew. It's a collective consciousness. This is what the nation is. That's on us.
It seems very much, it's not so clear. It's not really in the lines of what the Rebbe is saying, but this idea of Ovdi Kachavim, like you're talking about the gold guard or this guard, that, it's very much by nature we look for an easy way to live life. Life's overwhelming, so we want to kind of one tool, one derech, but what the Akum sees by the Yisrael is that, no, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We have space to incorporate everything.
Precisely.
We can have one God because the one God.
That's exactly what we're
right
saying.
Thing at the right time.
Precisely.
Whereas as an Ovdi Kachavim, you can be quote, lazy because it's just one standard. There's just one.
B'diuk. Exactly.
Is that Elokei Kesef V'lo Zahav Lo Sa'asulu?
We're going to see that in Torah Chav Zayin. Exactly. Sure. Mamish. Yeah, and this is the Avodah Zarah we spoke about in previous Torah. I was Torah Chav Gimel, that was the Torah, because Torah Chav Beis had already made reference to Nidas and Avodah Zarah, and the Rebbe connected that to money. Yeah. Take it from Miyad Nesalam Achein Va'Pe'er B'Sar. Haidul Hashem, I remembered. So I was pointing out, I wanted to point out that going back to Torah Aleph, even Chen is the inyan of synthesis, the ultimate synthesis. Ches and Nun. Right, like the Rebbe told us. Ches, Chachmilah. Nun, physicality. Artzius, Arlamasiya, Malchus. When you bring the two together, that's what produced Chen Amiti. Meaning, this that the Rebbe is using the word Chen is itself reflective of the collective synthesis of the Liha Kesef, Chesed, Liazav, Gevurah, coming down into Yisrael Shavachah Spa'er. And if we're putting forth the assertion that the whole entire Likutei Moharan is a manual for how to become the Ish HaYisraeli, which means that the whole Sefer is going to be filled with synthesis, much of which, or I shouldn't say much of, some of which we've already seen, especially, like we say, in the context of Yudiyah and Bechira, but there have been so many others, then really it all begins in Torah Aleph. Where in Torah Aleph, maybe the ultimate synthesis of syntheses are brought into being, where you have the necessity to bridge the gap between, from our perspective, the ratius of reality, ratius Chochmah, and the Bechina of the Ekev, of Ya'akov Avinu. And the putting together of the highest point with the lowest point, which is, of course, Yud Ekev, and that's Ya'akov, and that's Tiferes. Avodah. Take it umiyad k'sha'akam mekabel mammon miyisrael. Take it umiyad nes alem achein va'pe'er b'seich ha'mammon. The money, the chein goes away. Ubishvil ze ha'akam b'chol pam tevei ha'mammon acher miyisrael. And that so the Rebbe says, therefore they constantly want more. But you could also read it is that why does the chein and the pe'er disappear b'seich ha'mammon? Because b'shvil zeh that the akum is b'chol pam tevei ha'mammon acher Yisrael, meaning the chein was the product of this, that the Jews are not looking for more money. They're happy with what they have, ideally. And that's why it's the craziest distortion of the Zelu Umazeh that, by the non-Jews, they think that Jews are always money hungry. It's lehepech. If a non-Jew should ever, occasion to walk past a shtibel, he's walking in Flatbush, walking in Borough Park, he passes by a shtibel, and he sees ultra-Orthodox Jews walking around, money. Everybody's money. There's money everywhere, right? Jingling coins, coming with credit card machines, money on the table, money. They think the Jews are serving money or something like that. It's the craziest distortion. Why is there money everywhere? Because everyone's desperate to give money away. And the people going around collecting to distribute to someone else. But if you only look at the surface of reality with the Koyach HaDimyan, you see a warped reality. And then we, unfortunately, Rebbe Nachman is going to tell us in Torah Reish Nun, embody the perspectives of the Ummah Ha'olam, and we start to reflect their distorted views. But ideally, the Jew is always looking to give the money away. But because by the non-Jew the perspective is not necessarily that of Tiferes Yisrael, so that is both the effect of and the cause of that they constantly need more. And if forgot the money he already has, because as a result of that consciousness, the chein went away. The chein being synthesis, Chessed and Gevurah, Tiferes, mistapik b'muat, engaging with money as a gift from God to give to someone else, so that I can become godly and manifesting HaKadosh Baruch Hu's midas and creating the world that are the Chesed Binah, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with Shem Elokim. V'zeu she'ei mekar v'nela b'shas hanayasan. I'm sorry, we skipped a line. Yeah, we skipped a line. Go back. Ubishvilza, I skipped a line. Ubishvilza nikrem Russian. That's why the non-Jewish governments were called Russian. Be very careful of rashos, which is a reference to the government. So the Rebbe says, well, you can read it rashos like rishos, meaning they're in control, right? It's their property. Or the Rebbe says, really, kihim rashim va'aniyim. It's deeper. It's deeper. The more prominent they are, the more money they have, the poorer they are. Ki ein lem hana'a mimamoinam. You know why? Because they don't have hana'a from their money. And ki ilu hem aniyim. Because flip that around, what happens if you have hana'a from your money? You're an ashir. Ezu ashir hasameach b'chalkai. And this is supposed to be the embodiment of the Isha Yisraeli. But if you don't have that, and if ein lahem hana'a mimamoinam, because nebuch, their money has no chen, because they're not engaging with it in the proper way, and hem aniyim. Ute'evin l'mamin shal Yisrael. And then they think that they need Jewish money. And then it goes on, ki al mamoinam shal Yisraeli shara pe'er v'achen, because they think that by the Jew, that's where the money is shining. V'akol te'evim l'stakel al pe'er hazeh. So I skipped a couple lines. So here we go back. Avodah, said the Rebbe, takev kisha'akam mekabel mammon mi Yisrael. The minute that the money actually leaves the possession of the Jew and comes into the possession of a Yehudi, takev hamiyan salamachin va'pe'er v'seicha mammon, because they have no hana. Because the only reason the Jew had hana from the money is not because of the money, but because of the consciousness of ezu asher sameach b'chalkai. But the non-Jew has no hana from his money because he doesn't know how to settle. He doesn't know the secret which we have to teach them. It's not like, like that's not the point here. The point is, it's a nebuch. We should feel compassionate to Tzelem Elokim that doesn't know what it means to be a Tzelem Elokim. It's the biggest rachmanis in the world. Rachmanis. Person who doesn't know their potential. There's no greater rachmanis in the world. So it's a tragic thing. We have to fix this. It's a problem. We're the fixer men. It's on us. So b'shvil zeh ha'akam b'chol pam tevei ha'mamen acher mi Yisrael v'shecheach ha'mamen shekvar kibel kenes alam ha'chein k'shabali yad ha'akam, because the chein went away. V'zeu she'ein mekarvin ela b'shas hanayasa. And that's why the Mishnah continues, have is a here berashus. What does it mean on pipshat? Careful about government officials, because they seem to be nice to you only when it benefits them. That's what it means, al pipshat. Right? And that's why it's not a real relationship, because they're just manipulating you. They don't really care about you. They're bringing you close when it benefits them. And when it doesn't benefit them, you have no influence there. But the Rebbe is saying deeper. Have Zehir Merashos. Why is it that the prominent, prestigious members of the government, who are presumably very wealthy, why are they called Rashim? Because it's the opposite of Ezu Asher HaSameach B'chalkai. They're not Sameach in what they have, and therefore they're called impoverished. Says the Rebbe, the rest of the Mishnah is explaining that to you. Why are they called Rashas? Because Ein Mekarvin Ela B'shas Hanayasan. The money that seems close to them is only close to them for the first minute when they have Hana from it. That's how the Rebbe learns it. She'ein Mekarvin Ela B'shas Hanayasan. So it looks like they have money, but have Zehir and Berashas. The truth is they're poor. Because that hana that they have is fleeting. And they don't know how to sustain the appreciation and the gratitude that oftentimes comes from this, that a person, I shouldn't say oftentimes, is fundamentally established on the foundation of recognizing that whatever I have, I don't just happen to have, but was gifted to me by the Infinite One, who is being mashkiach over every aspect of my life and knows exactly what I need for my ultimate tachlis in this lifetime and in all lifetimes. That's the yisoid of Izu Asher Sameach B'chalkai. Why else should a person be Sameach B'chalkai? Why should it be b'simcha with a chelik? A chelik is only a little bit. Why should it be b'simcha with that? And the teretz is only if the reason you don't have more is because you really don't need more. If I don't believe that, so that I can't really appreciate what I have. If I really believe that whatever I have is exactly what I need in this moment, then whatever I have is literally everything. Because it's everything I need. Because it was given to me by the one who orchestrates precisely, exactly every single person's circumstances. And this is the side of Hashem doesn't give a person a challenge that they can't handle, right? And Hashem doesn't give a person a difficult financial situation that not just that they can't handle as a nisayim, but that isn't tailor-made for them in that moment. And then whatever little I have, it isn't like, I wish I had more. It's that gives a person the ability to experience the totality of the infinite within the fragmented shard of their experience. Because kesef and zav, even the smallest amount, liha kesef, liha zav. It's reflective of the gedulas habayri. That's the point. But if a person doesn't have that, she'im mekarvin ela b'shas hanayasan, because I don't believe that what I have is actually what I need. And so it's this constant consciousness of needing more and more and more and more and more and more. V'zebechinas, this will finish. Chen be'enei Hashem. Einei Hashem zegvanin ilayin. What does it mean? V'noach matzah chen be'enei Hashem. Where does a person get chen? Says the Rebbe, be'enei Hashem. Einei Hashem zegvanin ilayin. The eyes of a Kadosh Baruch Hu refer to Chessed and Gevurah, right eye, left eye. She'im bechinas kesef v'zav, sham ikar hachein v'hapa'er. When a person knows how to engage in a balanced Jewish way, the way of the Isha Yisraeli, the way of getting out of Dimyan and looking at money for what it was really given to us for in the context of the Tachlis, why we're in this world in the first place, what it means to be a human, what it means to be a Jew. Then the person has access to Chen Ha'amiti. V'zesha Amar Avimelech l'Sara. This is what Avimelech said to Sarah. Hina nasati elef kesef la'achich. I've given you, or I've given Avram. He was referring to Avram. He was referring to Avram Avinu, who was called the brother. Elef kesef. Hini hulach ksus einayim. This will be a ksus einayim, a covering for eyes. And the Medrash comments, ksus einayim means that because they're so wealthy, everyone will look at them. They'll be covered with eyes, meaning everybody will. He was trying to say, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu warned him, if you don't hashiv, if you don't return Sarah to Avram Avinu, terrible things will happen. So he gave her back, and he gave lots of money to Avram. Hainu, says the Rebbe al Derech Remez. Kishi yatsa mami miyada akam liadi Yisraeli. When the money, because it was never about the money, it was about the consciousness, comes into the possession of the Jew. Teikef niskala hagavadim anasav b'chinas bigdei yasha. Immediately, the midas are manifest again. It's lebedik, it's alive. The money becomes alive. It isn't something that sits in a storehouse that I want more of. It comes alive. And that's what it has to do with the eyes, because the eyes are chesed and gevurah. Where be'enei Hashem shakol mistaklim behem shakol te'evim listakel behem, because they see this is the way to engage with money. Here is chesed and gevurah. Here is balance. Here is a healthy engagement with finance. When a Jew goes ahead and gives money to tzedakah, so that is going to be relevant for the rest of the money that they haven't given, because it means that they're balanced between chesed and gevurah. They show that they could give money away when money ought to be given away, but the money that they have, they mamish have. And this manifests the way in which they recognize all the money is God's money, and therefore whatever I have is infinitely beautiful, and whatever I don't have, I'm not supposed to have, and it's all in the context of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bigdei Yesha. How do we get Bigdei Yesha? Yesha, we said, is not just salvation, but eyes, right? To turn. Yishayel Hashem. Me'il tzedakah ya'atani. It's the me'il of tzedakah. When a person gives tzedakah, that produces and enwraps us with the Bigdei Yesha. And even the money that non-Jews end up taking from Jews in some way is also nechshav l'tzedakah. The Gemara says, your eyes, brechas becheshbon, are like the well springs of cheshbon. Einayich zagvanim, bechinas kesef v'zav. That's the colors, kesef and zav. Einayich, like we learned, nizbarchim al yedei tzedakah. They have their bracha when a person gives tzedakah away. So why is that called brechas becheshbon? What's cheshbon? The Gemara says shekol pruta nitztarif lecheshbon gadol. Every pruta that a person gives is counted to a big cheshbon. Cheshbon is symbolic of tzedakah. So a person wants brechas that the bracha of chesed and gevurah should be manifest in their money. Einayich brechas becheshbon tzedakah. ואפילו על ידי המומן שבו לסויך יד האקם הנקראים בס רבים, שערי בס רבים, גם זה נחשב לצדקה, כמו שכתוב נגסייך צדקה, וזה דווקא על שער בס רבים. עינייך בריחס בחשבון, even על שער בס רבים. כשעדיין על השער, קודם שבו ליד האקם עדיין שער אכן על המומן, because then, על שער בס רבים, right? Even though the money that goes to them is still in some sense tzedakah, in some sense, but it's only al shar bas rabim, when it's still in the possession of the Jew, that it retains its chen. Aval achar kach, like we said, it gets lost. Ne'elam achen, because it's being engaged with by those who ein mekarvin el b'shas hanayasan, and they only have enough for a fleeting moment because they don't recognize that liya kesef liyazav, and therefore they're not happy with what they have, and therefore they're not ashirim, and therefore they're rushim. And this is part of what we need to fix in the world, to manifest the aura of synthesis, to teach the world how to engage with their property, with the consciousness of monotheism, and to balance chesed and gevurah, and in that sense to become ashirim. Asher Hasamech B'Chalmei. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
אני הבן ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני